All right, welcome everyone to this AMA Ask Me Anything on LinkedIn Live on my channel. I'm really excited to be doing this with a team that I am just super excited to be doing some work with. It's the team at Immerse.io. Their Immerse has seen amazing growth over the last couple of months. It's been quite amazing and we're really excited. So I know folks will be coming in as we go. So, whenever you want to kind of share comments, feel free to do so in the comments. We'll be tracking them. For questions, I will start the AMA by asking questions myself to the team, and then we'll open it up to questions from everyone. I would love to know if you can put in the comments where you are joining us from. That'd be really great to know some of the folks that are where they're joining us from. So I kind of want to welcome my guest today, which is a really awesome group of fellas that are joining me today to talk about employee experience. So we are going to go ahead and start with some brief introductions from the Immerse team. So let's start with Tom. Tom, if you can start introducing yourself, tell folks a little bit about what you do at Immerse, and then we'll go to Justin, Jonathan, and Lucas.
Great, Kathy, thank you very much. Great to be here. I'm Tom. I am the CEO and co-founder, and I have spent a big bulk of my time raising money and selling. I would say those are the two things that I've tended to focus on the most. That's probably why I've got the least hair of anyone else on the team.
There you go. All right, okay. Justin?
I'll go next. So Justin Parry, I'm COO at Immerse, also a founder with Tom. My background is all product development, but in the role at Immerse, I wear many hats. In a company of our size, a COO sort of picks up pretty much anything that needs to be done. But primarily I focus on delivery of our platform tech and all the content that we deliver to our customers.
That's awesome. Thank you, Justin. And Jonathan, how about you?
Hi guys, Jonathan Sutherland. I'm actually part of Immerse's expansion over here in the US. So I'm in business development. If you have any questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn or hit me up here in the chat. I'd love to talk about opportunities. I am one of the biggest fans of VR in the world. So would love to hear from you guys.
Awesome, great. And Lucas, how about you?
Hello, I'm Lucas. I am the CTO. I've been with Immerse for 6 years now. My background is mostly in low-level systems programming and backend infrastructures, but I got the opportunity at Immerse to work with a really cool and talented group of engineers, artists, and content creators to build our VR platform and strategy.
That's brilliant. Awesome. Thank you. And we are live right now on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I know I'm tracking it here on LinkedIn. We've got several people coming in. So definitely want to kind of start by talking about employee experience, right? What does that mean to each one of you? How do you define it? And then we'll get into, into more of the conversation of how VR and AR can unlock employee experience. So maybe who wants to kind of take that one? Anyone who feel really interested in explaining what they define as employee experience?
Yeah, I can take that one if you like. Yeah, do you want me to do that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this quite a lot recently because it's a big theme, of course. And for us, it's about a few different things. It's about engagement. It's about well-being. It's about learning. It's about knowledge. So all those things. But it also goes from the point that you begin your interaction with an organization, with an employer, to the very end. So right from the very beginning in the recruitment process, what's that like? What's your experience of that? To then onboarding, induction, how you're introduced into the business. And then, of course, your day-to-day, how you're supported through that. What's your experience of working in that organization on a sort of task level, if you like. And then what are the special moments that define it and light it up that really stand out, that stick in your mind? How are you supported in your development? How are your personal skills developed? Are you reskilled potentially as part of that role? And what level of support do you have in that? And also just in terms of the wider career, how does your employer and your organization help you move forward as well? How does it transcend that particular employer? So all of those things need to be considered. And for me, there is this interesting sort of point of potential hypocriticism in this relationship between an employer and an employee, in that we want our employees to offer the best quality service to our customers. We want them to work collaboratively with each other in a professional manner. We want them to treat partners, as we would expect. But there's a sort of there's a kind of quid pro quo there, in the sense that then, as an employer, you need to be seeing good on that as well. Otherwise, what's going on? That's like being a parent that tells their child to do as they say and not as they do. So there's a really interesting point to be an interesting dynamic that exists there, and so yeah, I mean, that in essence, it's essentially everything that you experience within that organization from start to finish, and it's the impact that has on your performance and therefore the overall performance of the business.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we just got a comment on LinkedIn from Julia. She said, looking forward to this. She said, ENPS is the new NPS. So I think that is very relevant to what you're saying. Tom, I think you wanted to add something to how you define employee experience.
Yeah, I think, when we've looked at, the big problem that we've been trying to solve over quite a few years now is a lot to do with engagement. How can you use technology in a way that engages the workforce? And I think, particularly during this very troublesome last 12, 15 months, we're all kind of completely zoomed into oblivion. No one wants to be doing any more Zoom. And it's kind of really brought home, I think, to us, and it's helped us as a business. It's forced people to really think differently. We cannot go on living our business lives conducted on Zoom as the sole way of communicating. And I think it kind of, for us, Justin and I, who've been in this space a long time, we've had that distinctly early feeling for a long time. And we're now thinking, at last, people are starting to look with all seriousness at immersive tech, particularly VR, because it's an amazing way to bring disparate workforces together, to really try and engage people, get a reaction, get some excitement, and that's what I think is kind of partly driving this focus on employee experience. That it doesn't have to be this very bland, two-dimensional effect. That can be part of it, but we think that these kind of new immersive techs can lift that experience, Kathy.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of defining it. And I see here, as we kind of keep going with the AMA, I see folks joining us from Seattle, from Switzerland, Netherlands, Ohio, a whole bunch of different places. So this is going live on YouTube and on LinkedIn right now. So we've got lots of different folks coming in. So from that perspective, let's talk a little bit more about VR and AR and the promise. Tom, you alluded to, we're zoomed out of, we're just tired of Zoom. How VR is starting to be one of those things that we're starting to use to feel more presence. But maybe let's talk a little bit more about the employee experience and virtual reality, right? And these immersive technologies that a lot of these companies are starting to deploy. And you guys, Immerse, actually works with 500 with Fortune 1000 companies implementing these technologies for their employees. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think what we've been seeing, particularly in the last year, is that companies that previously had been looking at VR mainly as a great way of delivering more operational health and safety type training, that's where a lot of VR, enterprise VR, really started. But I think as awareness of the technology increases, as we see, the advent of really strong mobile VR devices, then people are beginning to think, well, actually, maybe there's some other parts of the experience that we can apply VR to. So, as an example, onboarding. Onboarding is a great area for developing VR, because at the moment, you can't get your new starters, or it's unlikely you can get them to your new HQ, or you can't get them to the factory to see, give them a taste of, how the operations of a business works. So VR is a brilliant way of kind of bringing that to life, exciting people that are just joining a business, and you can give them a taste of, well, this is what it's like to be in the factory, or this is what it's like to be offshore, or this is what our new building feels like and sounds like. And so we've had, a couple of very, very interesting projects that are really embracing that. It's a great use of the tech. So that very early point. And I think if you introduce it right at the beginning, then in many ways there's an expectation you're setting that, well, why am I using VR for this? Why do I have to be sitting in a classroom for all forms of training? Or why am I tapping away a bit mindlessly doing some e-learning, which is sending me to sleep? So I think this is what we're finding exciting, that there's a real dawning in a lot of people's minds that this tech really can be applied right across the spectrum.
Awesome. And Jonathan, Lucas, do you guys want to add anything to that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, you're talking about kind of the Zoom and feeling exhausted from doing it all day long. And what do we as people want naturally? It's like we want a handshake, we want a high five, we want to be interactive with other people. And, so if you're introducing that day one in a COVID-like world and you're able to have those interactions, there's so many more opportunities to, just feel that real connection that you need with your EX, to get that really kick-started. So, I think one thing that COVID's doing for us right now is really proving that. And, it's showing us the value of going beyond just a screen and actually being able to interact with somebody one-to-one. And to me, I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. Lucas, I see you very pensive over there. Do you want to add something? I can't hear your audio.
I think we lost you.
Sorry, there we go. No, at the moment, I don't have anything
pensive.
to add yet to what my colleagues have said.
Pensive.
Just thinking great answers.
Frame rate on your camera is awesome.
Yeah, I know. For real. I do want to chat a little bit when we're talking about employee experience. One of the things I think a lot about is kind of the multi-generational people in the workforce, right? We've got all sorts of people of different ages. You've got Gen Z coming into the workforce and kind of changing things up. They're very, they like technology. I feel that, Gen Z is going to want the companies that they work for to be innovative in the way they train them and retain them. So maybe what are some of the observations along that? I mean, obviously, Gen Z tends to be relatively similar between the UK and the US, but there might be some different things here and there. But I don't know if anyone wants to jump in and talk a little bit about that.
Well, I remember when I started in my career, which was a long time ago now, but even back then, there was this massive divide between, the kind of technology that I was using at home and the kind of technology that was being used at work. And it was a very stark divide even then at the sort of start of the turn of the century. I think that's just got better. The gap has closed, but the expectations on the employee side have gotten even higher because of the quality of the products that we've got, the thought that has gone into UX, the thought that's gone into customer experience, into CX. All those things they've been focused on so much that expectations are through the roof. And so I think it's actually really quite hard for enterprise organizations to be able to match that sometimes. And I think what you come across is a weird, an odd experience of everything in your day-to-day life being, pretty slick and just working, to then not being able to use those things that are so productive in the workplace, where you would think that's where you need to be the most productive. And so I think that still exists. That problem is still out there. And the more that companies can do to close that gap, the better. And it obviously isn't just in immersive technology, it's across the board. I think working from home And everything that comes with the remote just exacerbates that, because we are totally fixated on technology now. So yeah, the big gap, the gap has always existed to some extent, I think, but it's just gotten more and more exaggerated.
Yeah, that's true. Does anyone want to add something?
One thing I would say is big enterprise have always had distributed workforces across the world. But the moment the way it's changing now is that those distributed workforces are no longer in little silos where they can interact within their own scope, and then there are distributed globally. But now it is completely spread out with everyone at home. And as Justin was saying, the ability to use the tech they have at home, it becomes even more relevant. So the ability to distribute that VR and AR experiences with that same tech to each person at home without having to have like massive software and hardware infrastructure in different offices around the world, that becomes a natural progression for this. The moment you can use the same type of things that you have in your house without needing to go to a specialized classroom type VR setup with the other logistics that has.
That's awesome. And we're starting to get some questions in the LinkedIn comments. So as they come in, I will be asking them. This one is from Josh Rubin. Hey, Josh. Josh is a good friend from Houston, doing amazing work over there. His question is, what is the primary metric that can be used to gauge the health and growth of the enterprise XR industry as a whole? That's a big question, Josh. But Immerse team, what is the primary metric that can be used to gauge the health and growth of the enterprise XR industry as a whole?
Ask me any
you have
question.
2 seconds to solve this issue. That's a great question, though. It's a great question.
It is a big question. I mean, the obvious answer is headset sales, of course, but I think depends on your definition of XR, perhaps, because the platform that we've got enables you to distribute real-time 3D or 360 content on headsets, but also in the browser or on desktop applications, mobile devices. So, yeah, if we're strictly talking anything that's channeled through a headset, then at the moment I can only think sales of those headsets. But I think we like to see it in a much broader sense. So therefore, you'd be looking, I think, at probably overall audience size and the amount of time being spent in those experiences.
I think one that it would be difficult to extract, but really useful, would be penetration in the operational side of businesses. Now, the reason I think it's difficult to extract is because businesses tend to be quite guarded in terms of analytics and how much they want to share with the overall industry on how they're implementing VR, how closer it has become to mission critical applications and operational things. But if you could take a good look at that, that will be a major, because it's just stable growth, right? It validates it at the operational level.
There's a good comment in the chat, which is, wouldn't it be adoption and retention of XR enterprise use cases, which is perfectly, a really a good point. I think it's that relates to what Lucas has just said, though, which is that there is a reluctance at the moment in some instances to sort of publish that data. We struggle with that because we've got lots of great stories and we can't tell them for one reason or another. But yeah, they would be highly indicative, of the success of the tech.
Plus, I think you can also add the fact that, it's relatively new. Let's call it relatively new. I mean, we've been working on this for a lot of us several years now, right? But, there's also like a lack of standards, or like there's no, let's say, governing body. Like, I think that we still need a standard for XR in some ways. At least that's my opinion. So
there's no accreditation of any VR-based training. I mean, it's something we're actually working on in the energy sector with some of our clients and partners. But I think you'd want to. Personally, I'd quite like to look at the pie chart of kind of overall learning and development, and see, well, there's obviously the biggest section of the pie is going to be e-learning. Then there's going to be the slightly smaller one, which is going to be classroom, and then there's probably going to be a really thin slither that is kind of XR. But I'd love to know what that is, and I think that kind of the thin slither is definitely getting bigger, certainly based on use cases that are beginning to be shared. But I still think that the dominant model for most training is that classroom stroke e-learning blend. That's what's dominated for 20 plus years, I would say.
Awesome. And we have a question from Bertie Millis. This is for you, Tom. It's actually quite funny. It says, I have an important question for Tom. This is an AMA, so I have to ask it. What is his favorite thing to order at 2 a.m. from a kebab shop?
2 a.m.
2 a.m.
I know you're up at 2 a.m.
I don't really like kebabs. I'm going to be really honest with you. So I would probably go for some of those pickles and some pita bread.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's an AMA. I have to ask you guys. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, and Bertie, thank you very much for asking the question.
Bertie, you're the best. Anyway, we have more questions coming up. We also have folks joining us from Barcelona, Costa Rica. Hey, Costa Rica in the house. Love that. San Francisco. Lots of cool folks jumping in. This one is from Neil Singh, who is in Ohio. He's a tech leader up there. He said, question, many employers see a disconnect when it comes to whether educators are preparing students adequately for the future of work. How does industry work with academia to implement training that is relevant using AR and VR? Do you want me to read it again, or did you get it, guys?
No, got it.
Okay. Who wants to take this one?
I'm trying to think through the answer.
Yeah, no worries. While you're thinking about that, users here are very disappointed. They thought it would be falafel. So there you go.
Yeah, I should have thought of that. I'm kicking myself now. I see it.
Oh no.
The trick, I don't know if while you think about a more comprehensive answer, Justin, I can say that coming from a software background, of course, education is always chasing the reality in the workplace. When whatever a computer science degree person is studying now will probably be not obsolete, but certainly outdated. Not in terms of the basics and the foundations. Those things are all great and are always useful. But when it comes to tech, unfortunately, there is a lag in curriculums and tech availability and that forward-thinking approach to education versus what's going on in the workplace. And that's why most people get the foundations, get the fundamentals, and then go out in the workplace and then adapt to whatever their needs are. So it is a problem for employers, as Luke says. But no, sorry, as Neil asked. Yeah. But it is something that has to be expected. You have to expect to train someone in the tech and in the work.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I've been working a little bit with one of the big universities in the UK on building a curriculum for XR students. So those that are planning to sort of get into the industry itself. And in that instance, they have reached out into the market, into SMEs and bigger companies to really ask them what they're looking for. So, what do you want? Hey, industry, what do you want from these students? And they've engaged a bunch of different companies in the crafting of that curriculum, which is a fantastic initiative. It's obviously different to providing, the technology itself, which is I think the basis of Neil's question, but that certainly has got to be the approach, right? There's got to be some consultation with industry to understand, exactly where this fits. The difficulty might be, though, certainly here in the UK, that there is some disparity between the individual educational establishments in terms of their ability to be able to afford and drive these kinds of programs and engage this kind of technology. So it's never going to be a completely level playing field, and but that's just the way it goes, I guess. But I mean, I think it's that engagement with industry to understand what they need, what they're looking for. But there are big problems around how you embed the hardware.
Yeah, and Neil, I know you said that your question got missed. If you can kind of maybe rephrase it or something in the chat, in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Neil did say, I think infrastructure and cost is also a huge barrier for mass adoption. So very interesting there. So Neil, if you want to clarify, you can put it in the comments. Luke, hey Luke, how you doing? Luke has a question. VR and the employee experience typically revolves around onboarding, training, mainly educational content. What thoughts does the group have around other aspects of employment and career? Things like culture, connection, building teams. Wow, that's a great question, Luke.
Yeah. Well, those things can be done for sure. I mean, I think we as a business focus on training because it's such an obvious use case, and it's the most well documented and researched one as well. But clearly, connection and building teams, there are collaborative VR experiences out there that are, excellent. They can vary, in most simple form, it is a question of bringing you together to run effectively a virtual meeting. But there's no reason those things can't become team building exercises, where you're engaged in a common problem, which may not even be specific to your business, but might replicate the classic, putting a raft together as a team to get across water. So there's no reason that can't happen. I've always thought it's a really good use case actually to build out, a suite of, team building exercises in multiplayer VR. And then culture-wise, we have built experiences that are based on culture. I can't talk about either of them, but they are essentially introducing people into the culture of the business and also talking about things like sustainability and the ethical practices that they have. Mm-hmm. So you can really take people away to a different place. And in this instance, that's what we do. We take you off to a very remote place and give you an experience of what it's like to be there. So they do exist. It's really a question of, I think, industry embracing those kinds of use cases more than anything else. A lot of companies start with training because it's the obvious place.
I would also add that I think sometimes the issue is a lack of curiosity in the enterprise. That there is an acceptance of established tech to deliver, solve certain problems, and I think we've certainly had our challenges in trying to persuade people to think differently about how they might solve a problem, and I think the culture piece would be a really good example of that. I think, as Justin's saying, that there are many things you can do with just a little bit of imagination. You don't have to spend crazy sums of money, but you have to be willing to experiment. And we're often sort of in a position where we're saying, "Come on, what's the worst that can happen?" You're putting people in an experience that is going to drive in interaction, and stimulate. So I think that's one of the challenges that we faced. I think again, it's sort of changing, and there are examples, as Justin said, which sadly we can't talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe Jonathan, from your end, from the work you've done in VR, because you've been in the space also several years, what do you think of that? What are your thoughts? What do you think about using VR for things like culture, connection, building teams? I mean, I had the chance to work with you when we were at HTC Vive, and it was cool to be able to kind of meet in headsets and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's something really to be said about the times that we live in now, especially, COVID, not being able to be within 6 feet of each other. I think we're seeing the technology shine quite a bit, through there. And like I mentioned earlier, a handshake means everything. I know I miss going and meeting with a group of people and ending that meeting with a handshake and a sign of goodwill, or working, with you, we'd be in Las Vegas and ending a really hard day, and it's just a big high five and let's go do something together. And that's, those are the small pieces, but it's still team building. Even those small gestures of just human interaction is something that, we've been without for almost a year if you're being responsible, in these times. And yeah, we're getting, the vaccines and I think there's still a lot to learn there, but, just being so far away from each other has put a stop to a lot of those things. But and then you think about diversity and inclusion, and what we're doing here in the U.S. I'm seeing some really great stuff from a lot of police departments on how to deal with really tough situations, and I think VR is a really great way to replicate those scenarios in a safe environment. And there's some really good learning experiences there. So not only are we keeping people safe from COVID, but we're also keeping them safe in those scenarios. And then, it's a real learning experience where you can connect with another human being. And I think that should just be kind of the overall message when it comes to some of this training and sim stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Luke, so Neil says, yeah, we did address this question, so we're good. Luke says, fantastic. Thanks for all the thoughtful responses. Thank you for asking the question, Luke. We really appreciate it. Yeah. We have a question from Duncan Roberts. He says, how do you think VR can overcome the uncanny valley when reproducing human interaction? Ooh, that's deep. Good one, Duncan. That's a really good one. Who wants to take that? Lucas, do you want to take that one?
The thing with the uncanny valley is that it's usually related to facial fidelity in facial expressions and the ability for an AI, a robot, to be as human-like as possible. So I'm not so sure. So it's an interesting question because, first of all, I would ask, why do you want to overcome the uncanny valley? In the sense that you want to build a VR experience that puts you in a situation in which you want to interact with an AI, but make it seem as human-like as possible. That you can certainly do that with VR without needing to enter the uncanny valley territory, just based on the quality of the AI itself, right? Which is something we actually experimented with. That could have. I'm not so sure if we can talk about it, but there are definitely very interesting uses to train with an AI soft skills, which is a naturally human interaction. But I don't see the uncanny valley as a problem for that, but rather a thing that is there.
I think we have this conversation quite a lot. I think uncanny valley is a problem that exists if you're trying to get as close to representing a human as possible, right? But you sort of fail, you get it wrong, and it just looks creepy. But very often, if you're trying to create a meaningful exchange with somebody in VR, for instance, rather than necessarily having an avatar or a non-player character, there are other ways to convey a feeling of a real person that don't necessarily rely entirely on that person looking completely and utterly accurate. And you would just have to look at all the amazing animated movies of the last 20 years where they're not real people, but you engage with them emotionally and they feel completely rounded as characters to sort of see that. So it's really about, do you even need to be thinking about Uncanny Valley a little bit, as Lucas says? It will be a problem if you try and fail, but what if you don't even try, because there's other ways to do it.
Awesome. And we've got, anyone else want to add anything before I jump to other questions? No? Good? All right. Yeah, I think that could be like a whole 1 hour talk on the Uncanny Valley. Ooh, so much to unpack there. So we have Miguel Angel Marino Orozco from Mexico. He's saying, XR technologies are meant to be the franca lingua for augmented everything, blockchain, AI, IoT, and digital twins. A tool for representing make this technologies easier to understand for everyone. So it's a comment. Thank you, Miguel. We appreciate that. Saludos a Mexico. So then we have Lee. Hey, Lee. Lee's a good friend of mine, and he has a cool new podcast out. So Lee, it says, it's natural that VR is used for training or simulation of real work. However, we haven't seen much in the way of new work that wasn't possible prior to VR being mass accessible. Have you seen any examples of new work in VR? Hold on, I just lost that question. In VR that wasn't previously possible. Ooh, good one, Lee. Have you guys seen anything? Yeah, that's a great question too. Very futuristic.
Good one.
I'm just reading that again.
The only thing that I have seen and discussed, and I discussed it in the last 2 weeks, was in the field of cyber. And it was talking about how you could use VR to drive people's awareness of what cyber threat meant in the enterprise. So it was really trying to take a completely different sort of take on it. So not, this is how you avoid, cyber incidents within your company. Don't leave a USB, lying around on your desk. Sort of basic, really basic stuff. This was much more, I want to be able to show the impact of cyber on the whole business. And so it's something really rich and visual. And I thought that was a really great potential use case that we're now looking at. So I think that was new and different compared to the kind of stuff we've been talking about today. And I think there'll be more of that. And that I think is a great way of leveraging the kind of wow factor of VR to sort of change behaviors, drive new awareness.
There's an interesting. We were having a conversation with another company yesterday, actually, that provides soft skill experiences, but they're all powered by humans. So they're representations of, there's the avatars that are used, and then there's somebody that will sat and be the trainer or be the person doing the role play, but that person will be role playing multiple characters all at once. And so their voice will be modulated, etc., or changed to make it appear as if it's lots of people all in the room at the same time. Now, that's not necessarily, you could say that's kind of a role that in different ways existed before, but it struck me that it was quite an interesting and unique new challenge to essentially embody, 4 or 5, however many people all at once in order to create an experience. That seems new to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I've seen 2 things. Lucas, do you have something to add?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I saw you move your hand. I wasn't sure. So I would say I've seen 2 interesting things. One along the lines of what Justin just mentioned. So I did Dr. Crumb's Disobedient Pets, which is like a escape room sort of situation. There's some AI elements to it, but you've got a live host, right? So it's kind of like these new jobs for performers, right? People that are going in and embodying this character, and kind of like they do on stage or they do in immersive theater or when you go to the theater, but now they're doing it in VR. So, it's hard to read people's cues if you can't see them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like, okay, this is going to be very interesting. Who's going to shine as a VR performer when, you're trying to read people's avatar cues? That's, complicated. And I will say also and Lee, you're going to love this, but from brain-computer interface, I've been able to test many of these external devices, nothing internal. So putting on a VR headset and using one of these devices, I've been able to play games, input codes. So I can imagine being able to do some type of training related to new work using VR and brain-computer interface. There's a video of someone wearing the device that, Justin, you're the one that told me about this video, but the one of someone wearing a brain-computer interface device and meditating, and the more she goes into a state of flow, more like these little trees pop up and stuff. So I'm not saying that's necessarily work. It could be if you're Deepak Chopra, but yeah, I think that there's going to be some interesting things along those lines. All right, so let's keep going. We have a question from Sium, and I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. I apologize. May you provide specific examples on how you've seen tech engage the workforce or improve their employee experience during operation? I'm not sure if you mean during an operation, like a physical surgery, or during, some operation. So do you guys have any examples? I know that, we did a clubhouse yesterday, and I think, Tom, you mentioned how DHL used I believe it was DHL that used VR to kind of do a few things with employee experience. So I'm not sure if you want to share that example. That's obviously not surgical, but it's still a good example.
Yeah, look, I think the DHL use cases remains one of our best. So this was a really clever kind of gamified experience that DHL started with, and really great creds to them for showing that curiosity and the imagination, 3 odd years ago. I mean, they were kind of quite out there in the way that they were thinking about it. But the idea was, how can you use VR to illustrate, part of the massive complexity of DHL, a really critical part, and that was the loading procedures around a container that ends up going in the plane. And the great skill that they've obviously developed over many, many years is, how do you get all these odd-shaped packages to fit snugly into this kind of aircraft-shaped container without leaving a big gap at the top. So, their mantra is, do not ship air through air. So they have to absolutely ram it in. And there's all kinds of techniques that they develop. So we created this kind of real-time experience. You had 3 minutes, you were in the warehouse, and you had kind of different type packages coming off the conveyor belt, and you had to pick them up, weigh them, and then stack them in the right place in the container in 3 minutes to try and achieve the outcome. And that was a brilliant use case. I think it's one of the best that we've seen. And again, another thing I thought that was brilliant about the way they approached it was that when they launched it, the idea, they had a big conference, and I think they had their head of EMEA versus their head of US going head to head in real time on 2 giant screens, and it just created amazing buzz, and people were like, oh wow, this is the way we should do it. This is it. So that was a terrific example, I think. If you're a big company or a small company, use your imagination and bring things to life in a fun way.
We're gonna have to set up that Immerse challenge.
Yeah.
Versus UK.
I need a copy now to start practicing, please.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. Very cool.
Awesome. We have a question from Rodolfo Seglio. Thinking about employee experience in a specific process, I keep thinking on how something like this would help hiring and onboarding processes to be more efficient for everyone involved. Has this been an area, has this been an area that VR and AR has been applied to? It seems like a lot of untapped potential. So getting to know the candidate, getting to know the company, touring the facilities, that's what he mentions. Has this been an area that VR and AR has been applied to? It seems like a lot of untapped potential. So who wants to take that one?
Well, I mentioned before that we've done some onboarding experiences, but that is really sort of providing knowledge to the new employee, to the new starter. The reverse of that, I haven't seen any examples of, where essentially, you are getting to know the employee, and I haven't seen I certainly haven't seen one that seems to have been rolled out at any scale, any example of recruitment either. But it seems to me, I agree, it seems like an area that's ripe for exploitation, for sure. Yeah,
look, Rodolfo, you're spot on. I mean, I remember discussing a couple of years ago with a very, very big international hotel group, and we were looking at ways to help them kind of create a filtering process. They said that they received thousands of applications for people who were going to work on the front desk. And we were exploring ways of trying to slim the interview or the volume of the interview process down and filter out people that were clearly absolutely not suited for the beaming smile and the welcome. And they said, if you could replicate that kind of experience where we could stick someone in for 10 minutes and we would know instantly, or pretty instantly, whether they were at least worth seeing in person, so the expensive bit of the interview. So I think, I think these things will come back. I mean, that would be a brilliant use case. Or, putting people through different sort of pre-recorded customer service type scenarios. An irate customer comes up to the front desk and, okay, how are you going to react? Choose A, B, or C in a very kind of simple way. So yeah, no, there's a lot of scope there for sure.
Yeah. And adding to that, there's actually a documentary coming out about how algorithms are being used to recruit people, and and how it's just become very not very human, the recruiting process. So maybe that is the opportunity, for NVR to be part of this recruiting process and humanizing it. I mean, maybe it's a world where, a lot of people have VR headsets and they're able to apply for a job using the VR headset. I don't know. I think we need to think through that a little bit more, but there could be something there, right?
Yeah.
I think we've got Ed shared a video of the DHL VR training. So thank you for sharing that. Ed, Neil, thank you. Neil said, he believes we need more employers understanding how to use AR and VR to create employee experiences. I completely agree. We have a comment coming in from YouTube. This is the first one from YouTube. It says, with so many people out of work, couldn't we have an app or game that introduces career choices and examples of that job or career to provide people with more comprehension on what is out there?
Great.
Yeah,
that's a great suggestion. A great suggestion. I mean, I think that's, industry bodies, should really be leveraging the technology to bring to life, different aspects of, a specific profession. I think that is a really terrific idea. We'd love to be part of that. A great use of the technology, for sure.
Awesome. As we're waiting for more questions to come in, I do want to ask one because this is one of the reasons I believe in Immerse, and I'm really excited to be a global advisor to you guys, is that you are an open platform. So, let's talk a little bit more about that. Why Immerse? Why an open platform? Why does this make sense? So, would love to hear from each one of you guys on that while we get more questions.
Justin, do you want to go in first?
Yeah, okay.
Your idea.
So right from day one, we wanted to enable other people to create content. We didn't want to be the kind of company where our relationship with the customer was exclusive, in the sense that, hey, you can only, you can use our technology, but only if we build the content for you. That was never part of our thinking. So we created an SDK that plugs into the platform, that enables any content creator to create anything they like. We major in training, but it can really be anything, and that can be added to our platform and will then become enterprise ready. And by enterprise ready, I mean that we're plugged into enterprise systems, so users can come in securely. The experiences can be distributed in a number of different ways across a number of different devices. All the reporting is centralized, aggregated into one place, and then all of that can be pushed out to enterprise systems as well, and all of that done in a highly secure way. So we see it as an empowering and an enabling of this vast community of immersive content creators, because everybody's got their own specialism. Everybody's good at different things. We're good at content, but for instance, we don't major in soft skills, but there are lots of companies that do, and we want to be able to not only help those companies to get their content into the enterprise organizations, but ensure that those big orgs have got all that content available to them in a uniform, secure fashion.
Yeah, the first word that comes to mind whenever I think of an open platform is freedom. It's freedom for our partners, freedom for their end users to give them the choice to make a choice on how the content's made, who makes it, how it's deployed, and then being on an open platform for us also means being agnostic when it comes to hardware. So whether you're working, on a tablet or a phone, on one of the major VR headsets, HMD, or you're on WebGL, you have all of those options. And when you give everybody those options, you're allowed, access to a larger audience. I think the overall goal is to empower people across the globe to do better. to do more things. And so when you have that kind of relationship between the hardware and the software, you're allowing yourself access to the most ROI possible. And we're not even just talking about a currency. We're talking about, mind share to your vision, or mind share to your why, I guess, basically. So it's just a really good, I guess, environment to put you and those who you care about and who you want to work with in.
Awesome. Anyone want to add anything else? We've got 2 more questions coming up. So, and I know we only have 8 more minutes. So, but I'll go straight to those questions if that's okay. So we have Bill Curtis Davidson. Hey, Bill, how you doing? It says, let's see. Let me go to the question. In my work focused on inclusive product design and accessibility for people with disabilities, we are exploring in more detail VR/AR communication, meeting, and collaboration type applications. This is the key to an inclusive hybrid telework. Do you know of any relevant EX or user studies that specifically look at diverse user challenges in adopting and using immersive VR and AR meeting communications tools? I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure if you guys have come across any specific uses of EX or user studies that identify this challenge.
I personally have not seen anything, but that's a fantastic idea, though. That's something that I would take notes on and go check out now.
We in one of our applications, we gave some serious consideration to those questions. We did build in an environment that would essentially configure itself around you based on height, or if you had to be sat down and all those sorts of things. We put in automatic subtitles. And we have a customer that's really one of our main customers that is very, very interested in exploring that as a research initiative. So we're engaged in those conversations because it is it's a key area that as yet I don't think has really been explored.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have Daniel Meek saying, sorry if it's been answered. How do we overcome sanitary concerns of HMDs for high circulation of users? Not everyone can deploy a clean box. Also, many don't want to disturb their makeup. A soggy interface at the end of the day is a special kind of ew. Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm sure you guys have faced that question from employers that want to deploy HMDs.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of the, our key clients tend to be reasonably large enterprise. And so, deploying a clean box is something that, they can afford. I think, is there a cheap, safe, hygienic, mass solution that we've come across other than, without wishing to sound too crass, sort of baby wipes? The type of thing that we've done at big conferences where we might have 1,000 people through the stand. To be frank, that's it's not in any way to trivialize the problem, but we haven't come across a solution I think that is cheap yet. I think that's right, guys.
Yeah, it's a perfectly legitimate concern, definitely, and we have to tackle it quite regularly. But as you say, Tom, I think in most instances we work with organisations that are big enough to tackle it. So, but it's an issue.
There is, I would say that also with what happened during the last year, there has been a bit of a pause in advancing that space because you don't have those logistics centers with like 5 headsets and hundreds of employees going through them every day. And we are moving towards more untethered devices and everyone having their own at home miniaturization going forward. So you don't have these big hot devices with a full computer running on your face. The space with the pandemic and where the space is moving, there might be a tipping point there in which it becomes less of a concern before the technology to make clean boxes cheaper gets there.
Yeah.
And we had a comment from YouTube from Traveling Man. It said, couldn't extreme cold kill viruses keep them in cold storage might be an idea. I don't know. I don't know, but I'm sure maybe someone out there is looking for a box.
Not what I'm an expert in.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Possibly, yes, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the startup idea, if anyone knows, and it's true, I don't know.
Yeah.
But good question. Maybe it's like a cool box and not a clean box. So we'll see. I think we're getting to the end of our AMA here on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. So I want to thank everyone that's been joining and asking questions. I mean, we had all sorts of really deep questions, some fun questions related to falafel. I mean, we had a kind of a huge range. So I'm glad I've been able to do this with the team at Immerse. Guys, do you want to kind of just maybe wrap up with a comment or two and where folks can find you? So Lucas, we'll start with you. Just a comment or two, and where can folks connect with you?
Yes. One thing I may add just about the previous question when we talk about the open platform. One of the key aspects that we really like to make everyone aware of here in this audience and further, obviously, is that we've established how the platform works in a way that the SDK and all the platform technologies, our multi-user service, their reporting services, all the platform infrastructure, connectivity such as integrations, it all sits in a way next to your content creation pipeline and toolkit, so it collaborates with it, as opposed to being something that determines how you have to approach content creation. So that is a major aspect. Our idea is to have it to deploy that SDK and make it available in a way that developers and content creators of different levels of skills and ability can create content and make it available on the Immerse platform going forward without a massive jumping. They don't have to go through many hoops to get there, let's just say. And we call it like a tier system where you can have very easy access to create content for that open platform with single player content, and then a bit of a tier 2 system, which is just an internal nomination, but basically saying, well, if you want multi-user, you need to be more involved, obviously, in the way you code it. But the barrier of entry to creating content and making it available at enterprise scale, which is something that was impossible just a few years ago, it is now really, really low. That's the core aspect of what we mean with an open platform and being friendly and enabling those content creators.
Awesome. And where can folks connect with each one of you guys?
So
sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Tom.
I think it was Lucas. Yeah, go ahead, Lucas.
I am LRSP on Twitter and on LinkedIn, Lucas RSP.
Awesome. Justin?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you make content, if you make immersive content, if you're interested in immersive content or immersive technology, feel free to get in touch. We've been around a long time, know what we're doing, got the right technology and experience. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn directly. That's great. Or we can go to our website, which is immerse.io. We'd be very happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Jonathan?
Yeah, like Justin was saying earlier, but also I think a lot of you probably came from Kathy's link that tagged Immerse and tagged a couple of us individually. So if you're in the US and want to learn more about Immerse, obviously the website, but feel free to connect with me. Even if you just want to chat about VR in general or XR, would just love to hear from you, connect with me, and let's get some done.
Awesome. And Tom, you get the last words.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much, Kathy. It's been really fun, and hopefully we've been able to answer most of the questions. It's really exciting to see the kind of smarts from the questions that are coming in. It shows that this space is moving. There's real interest. There's clever interest now, and so look, as Lucas has eloquently explained, we're open for business in terms of content, ideas. You can find us, you find me on LinkedIn and the rest of the team. So thank you very much for all of you tuning in.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This was a great AMA, and hopefully we'll have more in the future. All right, everyone, have a great day.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Kathy.